Yeah, go for it, Henning.
Yes, it reminds me of a story a student told me. We were just chatting with each other. It's a girl. She's about 12 years
Mm,
old, I think, or 13 years old. And I asked her what what brought her to our school because she has been to another school for the first 2 school years. She has been in another school,
mm,
and then she had the chance to switch to our school. And I asked her why did she decide that? And she said she didn't decide it. She asked her mother asked her if she would like to stay in her school or if she would like to change to this new school.
mm,
And she replied to her mother, "I don't know. Decide for me, please."
hmm hmm Yeah, and there's also a uh in the self-determination theory literature, there's a sort of most of the literature to date has been sort of assuming that you're either supporting or thwarting needs, or that needs are either satisfied or thwarted. But I'm not sure how long ago, but there's another one that's saying, well, wait a minute, there's another possibility here, and that is dormant needs. And I think that what they were pointing out is that this sort of helps explain certain types of patterns. Um, the thwarting, so I think this gets at what we would think. It's as if you only had, you know, achievers and explorers versus resistors. And so dormant needs are why you get passengers. Is the kids are neither pursuing their needs, which would be resistance if it's not consistent with the context, but they're also not, they're just letting it ride, like saying, okay, well, eh, I'll just be here and I won't pursue my needs, but I also, won't pursue what they're offering as activities. I won't, I'll just barely go along with the program, minimal. And so thinking about it is if your needs have become dormant, then you're not pursuing autonomy. So for instance, it's not necessarily that she trusted her mother entirely with the decision. Like, I don't know whether the quality of their relationship was. It could have been that, but
I
it could
think so.
also be,
I think so. No.
yeah, yeah, hopefully.
Mhm.
Um, but it could also be that you just said, oh, make the decision for me because I'm not used to pursuing that need. Now, that's not healthy to not pursue the need, but it's also not the worst detriment, to needs either, to well-being. So that's why there's a in the spectrum of motivation, one of the ones that's on the edge between um, autonomous and controlled is called and I just blanked on it. Um, introjected. That's what it is. Introjected motivation. But introjected motivation was found to have two components. There's sort of positive introjects and negative introjects. Now, an introject, the term comes from Freud, or at least translations of Freud, um, and it means something where guilt and shame and things like that are introjects. It's something where guilt and shame are the negative introjects. Pride and I think there's a couple of other positive introjects, but the positive introjects are where you get sort of neutral for well-being, as opposed to the negative introjects, which are clearly negative for well-being, but not as negative as uh, external regulation, which is rewards and punishments. But that's where the kind of dividing line between positive and negative things. It's slightly negative, but you also have that dividing line is on the positive side is identified regulation. So when you're identified as a motivation, you're saying, "Oh yeah, I get it. I'm not inherently joyful about it." That would be intrinsic motivation. It's not in my identity in the sense that um, someone like me does that. That's called integrated. But I get it and I can logically figure it out and I can come up with the reasons. So that's what identified is. I can identify the reasons why this is a good idea. Not identified in the sense of identity, but identified, I can identify the reasons why this is good. And that actually has somewhat positive effects on well-being, but it's still an extrinsic motivation. um, so yeah, so the having that more subtle insights into how the whole motivation spectrum works is really important, because it really gets at understanding where these needs fit. Is you can have the needs satisfied, you can have them dormant, or they can be thwarted. And I think a lot of what the mainstream does is not thwart needs directly. That's the worst case scenario. And when you see, I was mentioning the Hollywood movies like Stand and Deliver and Freedom Riders and things like that, is yeah, those are portraying situations in which needs are actively being thwarted in the school situation. But I think most of the mainstream is that dormant fit stuff. Is you get a lot of passengers, you get a lot of people. In fact, the majority are actually achievers. They're actually doing enough to get a decent grade, but there's that whole set of passengers who are just going along. Their needs are probably dormant, is they're not really pursuing them. They're not really thwarted directly, but they're just sort of going with the flow.